Knowledge or nonsense is a nuts and bolts discussion of information that serves not only the sterilization audience, but the general public as well. We navigate through and transition out of wrong thought processes and myths, especially as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic. The audience will benefit from our ability to sterilization and infection control measures plain by translating regulatory jargon into daily language and actionable steps. Steps that not only include us, but consider us. The same for the community. There are things that are including us but don't consider us, and so we're going to look at it. We're going to vet. Where did you hear it from? Who said it? Is it sound? Does it make sense? Is it knowledge or is it nonsense? Here we are. We are our own voice. You matter, I matter, we matter, and we're better together. Join us on Knowledge or Nonsense. Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Karen Combs with Knowledge and Nonsense. Man, we have a full panel. We're going to have a good time. We're talking about isms within the system. What that means is any ism that has impacted anything that happens within the system, whether it's healthcare, education, social systems, government, whatever it is, if it has an impact or it has prevented or caused something to happen that would pigeonhole someone into a certain area. We will talk about the origins, the patterns, and the identifiers so that we can see something different. We got a little bit of feedback coming through, but we're going to jump right in with some questions. And also, everything that we do comes from a leadership perspective. Want to put that out there. We're looking as far as leadership. So let me, as we ask some of these questions, I'm going to try some muting and see if the feedback eases up just a little bit. Let's see. All right. After we ask a couple of questions, I'll go into our guests and who we have today, let you know them, their history, where they come from, who they represent, and if you want to get in contact with them, we'll definitely be able to put something within the comment section so that you can reach them, or you can reach out to me at UCDI Leadership if you want to have a further conversation with any of our panelists. All right, thanks so much. Knowledge and Nonsense, guys. How are you doing today?
Awesome.
Doing good.
Good. Cool. So we've been here a few times and we're talking a little bit. It's a lot going on in the world today. Isms within the systems. On Thursday night, we were talking about some of the isms and people spoke on some of the isms and some of the perceptions that come with isms, some of the things that drive behavior within isms. What are some isms that you all have seen over the course of your life that impacted you, whether in the workplace or whether in opportunities? What are some isms that you may have seen? Because it's not racism and sexism. There are other isms, but what are some that you all have seen?
Well, good morning, team. One that I've seen, and I didn't realize it till years later how prevalent it was in my daily existence, was colorism, right? So I come from a family of 6 siblings, and my youngest brother, we look, some would say exactly alike, but he's Karen Cherry's complexion. You know? And I remember growing up, Karen and team, my aunts and things would always say, look, Sean, he's the bad one. You know, Wayne is the good one. Sean is, you have to watch out for. So by default of just his complexion, he would be given a short end of the stick or limited opportunities, even as a kid. You know, something as when I think back, if we had a barbecue, you know, and I would automatically get the largest helping of cotton candy, right? And he would get the smallest one, even though we're the same height, the same everything. But when I began to understand what colorism was and how that resonates in the workplace, that was my earliest introduction. And I can't say I was a victim of it, but I understand how many people I love or who I work with were victimized by it. So that's that was my earliest example of colorism.
Yeah. Now, Wayne, I agree with that. And on the flip side, I was that one that would hear, you could be pretty if you weren't so dark, or and I'm saying against how we don't even realize how we talk, amongst ourselves. But then I remember a Caucasian guy saying, if you weren't Black, I would date you. But anyway, so it's interesting how we let color play a role of how we feel someone should look, or the person I would date if they weren't, a certain color.
All right. And so what I always like to do is when we talk about the isms, like the origins of that. And, there's a book that says it's called The Making of a Slave. And I don't know if this is where it originated worldwide, because actually when I was studying different things about like China, there's some very dark skinned in the history. There's some very dark skinned people. Like if you look at the images, they look like African Americans, not Americans. They look African based off of their color. And they experienced some of those same things. But in this book, The Making of a Slave, it talks about, like a hierarchy based on color. And so I'm like, within this country, that's one of the main origins of that mindset. And so if you know where the origin came from, then it helps you break the pattern, because a lot of times we do things just because that's the way it's always been done. Or when we see it, we assign a meaning to it that's not the actual meaning. Like, had Lil Wayne not had he not had a brother that was maybe a darker complexion than him, he could have easily believed that this is just the way it is and that he is the bad one. But because he was in proximity, he was able to see something that was different. And so most times patterns remain until we're able to get different information or something that interrupts that concept. So the origins that I truly believe come from that hierarchical system that came out of, if you read their book, The Making of a Slave. And it's a very small book, but it's dealing with the Willie Lynch letters. And so that's one of the patterns there. Anyone else have any experiences with colorism?
No, I haven't had the experience with colorism. Mine has been the sexism because of dealing in sports. Yes. So I've had to deal with, it's a man's world. And so with me being the CEO of Evolve Sports and actually training athletes, because all 5 of my children are athletes. And so I have to go back a little bit. So I came from Oklahoma. My kids went to a predominantly Caucasian school, which I chose because I know I wanted them to get a good education. And I know they had a good sports program. But for me, everything in my life has been like, okay, God, is this you or is it not you? So I remember driving down I could tell you where I was. I was on the overpass and I was headed to the kids' school. And on the side of me was this young Caucasian boy in a BMW convertible. And the first thing that came out of my mouth was, look at that spoiled brat. I said it. And God said, no. And I was like, what? He goes, he's not spoiled. His parents built him a legacy and you could do the same thing. And then he took me back to the Bible about generation. And from that day forth, I never saw color. I was like, oh, this is a legacy thing. And when God said I could do it, then that means nobody can stop me. And so from there, I started my company and I realized I've got 5 athletes who has a purpose and that's what I have to focus on. And so going after that, I was like, God, I'm a woman and I got to go deal with men. So what you got to help me through this process. And little by little, he started to show me. So for me, it was like, look, I have an assignment. Everything in my life I've done like that. Like I have an assignment and either I'm going to get it done or I'm not. And in the end, God is going to be the one to deal with me about the assignment, not you. I can't go, well, God, I'm a woman and they wouldn't let me. Well, God, I was Black and they wouldn't let me. And so that's kind of how my journey, and I raised my kids like that. I was like, look, you got an assignment. You got to do it. Because in the end, when it's time to stand before him, he ain't going to look at he ain't going to look at the race card. He ain't going to look at the sexual card. He ain't going to look at none of that. He going to ask me this question. Why didn't you do what I told you to do? And
when you see it though, when it hits you, what are some of the strategies? So I know now what your driver is. I know what governs all of your activities. what are some of the strategies that you've been able to use when you do come and encounter it with maybe someone being dismissive of your voice initially because of your sex?
Well, I guess for me,
CEO of Evolve Sports, so
I kind of chuckle. I chuckle because I go back. I guess I get to the point like, God, you see this, so now I need you to fix this, because I realize if I carry it as a chip on my shoulder, I might miss an opportunity to be a blessing. So when I run into situations like that, I just like, okay, and I do one of those things. Okay, it's kind of like I watched the Michael Jordan. Have you guys seen it? The Last Dance. And every time they told Michael he couldn't do it, he didn't get mad and go off on media. He just had this, okay, all right. And then he go back and do what he have to do to let them know I can't do this. So for me, I just go, okay, all right. So I go back, whether I research, whether I study more, whether I get in my word more, whether I pray, I'm like, okay. And sure enough, he works it out every time. So it's like, there's always a way around.
That's what's up. So. That's what's up. For me, I just a snippet. I referee basketball, and that is when I got into that dominant male sport. And I did start in Oklahoma, and I remember being in the Stillwater area up toward OSU at a camp, and at the social event. And there was a certain time in that evening. Just the things you have to listen to being on the court as a woman, as a female, and as an African American female. And then like just the things even amongst my colleagues that I would hear. And I'd be like, wow, is that okay for you to even say to me? And I used to just think to myself, and sometimes I still do, I have to catch myself. I'd be like, man, I'll be glad when they have a daughter. Because when you have a daughter, your conversation will change.
Changes, yeah.
You think it's cute. Look at your audience. I'm not smiling. And so so I've dealt with sexism that way. But I like what you said because you recognize your own ism. You had some classism and some racism operating in you. So the origins and the pattern would be, so I'm glad that you self-checked. Yeah. So I am going to listen. Let's keep talking about some colorism. When I come back, I'm going to unmute you, Brian. I don't know where that feedback was coming from, but when I come back, let me do it now because I'm going to let this just go for a moment. We have another guest that wants to get on. So I'm going to pull my stuff out. She says, okay, I will in just a minute. And I'm going to put this in. This is a great read. For those of you who are like, what is colorism? Is that even a thing? Are they making it up? No, we ain't making it up. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. It's just a continuation of racism. But here's the thing. Just because you're a victim of an ism doesn't mean you can't be a carrier of that ism yourself. If you're not self-aware. So you want to be self-aware. Let's go down to this question. And you can always go back if y'all have something else you want to say on colorism. This is an organic conversation. Just jump in. If it's something you want to say, just say it.
Well, Sharon, you know what I wanted to share with you is that my grandparents are from the deep South. And when I say deep South, I think anything past North Carolina is deep South, where I'm from. So they're from South Carolina, a little town called Sumner, in an area called Wintersville, which is no longer there. And my granddad made sure he would share his childhood stories and the stories that his grandfather gave him. So I remember that little song, if you're black, stay back. If you're brown, stick around. If you're yellow, you're mellow. If you're white, you're right. Right? So he would share that to make sure we don't forget or pretend that these things don't exist. And he wouldn't share it in a sense to make it a barrier, but to bring a heightened sense of awareness so we can know our environment. And his message to us was always know where you are so you know how to maneuver. So he one part of his legacy was to make sure we were walking around with a veiled sense of reality to understand how we are so we can adjust our approach and use our proudness properly.
All right. I like that. So in healthcare, we have healthcare individuals on here. What are some isms that you guys have seen that, well, it didn't prevent, because everyone on here is successful in their own right. So it didn't prevent. It may have created a little more, I think adversity is a coach. You know, just like in a game, 2-minute drill, adversity can be a coach to bring out the best. What are some things we've seen in healthcare that may have served as a barrier to a position, to a promotion, to even just a job, maybe in a different area that we've experienced?
I mean, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I have experienced racism. I'm in a field that is mostly dominated by Caucasian women and men, especially in the South. I didn't really see color when I stepped into this industry. I'm a dental hygienist. And my first job in North Carolina, I worked in my neighborhood. So I didn't see anything wrong. You know, I didn't think I was going to experience this type of barriers. But when I walked in there, I saw all Caucasian women. But it didn't stop me from, pursuing the position. It's not until I got in that I started seeing that they didn't want me there. They didn't want me there. There were private conversations happening all around me. A lot of them was so I can hear the conversations, It was uncomfortable, but I knew, with my upbringing, I still had to persevere. I still had to push. Not every, job is going to be made up the way you want it. But it's not until this particular day when I realized that my schedule was so full of patients, and my other hygienist counterparts weren't working as hard as me. So I had to go back and say, what is going on? And I realized what was going on, and I had to dismiss myself from that practice. But I realized in the South, even though I have changed, I have evolved, the idea of Blacks working in certain communities and certain fields hasn't changed. Has not changed. They don't want you there.
So Kwame, I was a dentalist. It's funny you say that. I was a dental assistant in California and relocated to the South. And so I was so excited to see 2 different offices had positions available. And I thought, lucky me. So I sent my resume to both places. And this was some years ago. And I happened to have interviews with both places on the same day, one in the morning and one that afternoon. So I go to the first office, and that woman asked me if she could help me. And I said, I'm Karen. I was Lindsay at the time. I said, I'm Karen Lindsay. I have an interview for the dental assistant position. She says, hold on 1 second. So then she comes out, the dentist comes out behind her, and he says, we already have a gal that cleans our offices. So I said, no, I'm here for the dental assistant position. He was laughing so hard, he'd start choking, went back in his office and closed the door. As I stood there just looking like, and so she looked at me, the receptionist looked at me like, that's it. So I left and went to the other dentist office later on that afternoon. And when I went in, there were people in the lobby, and it was only one dentist that practiced at that office. So I said who I was. I was there for dental assistant interview, and she said, the dentist is not here today. So I said, well, who are these people waiting for? And she said, I said he's not here today. So the next day, they both put in the paper, sent picture and resume. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. But again, what Shannon said, I figured out how to get over, get under, get around it. That wasn't where God wanted me to be. I had that experience to take me where God wanted me to be, which is where I am today. So,
and that's what I want to ask.
For those opportunities.
That's what I want to kind of ask. We have these things, right? Where do you guys think the origins of that come from? Because those are patterns. What we're talking about, those are patterns, and they're hurtful patterns. I'm sorry that you had to experience them. And when you're in them, you're just so like, oh, I'm so upset over it. But when you get a little past them, it does. This is going to sound crazy, but depending on how you approach it, you can be like, you exceed that. You understand what I'm saying? It causes you to tap into something that, what if you had gotten a dental hygienist position? And what if that was a stopping place? And so by you still saying, no, let's check out some other things. No, it's not fair. And a lot of times people's like, it's not fair, but life is never fair. It's not fair. Nepotism isn't fair, and that's an ism. But when people are working, they are setting up like a legacy for their family. You know what I'm saying? And so then you can go and you can work twice as hard as somebody, but they're in their family. So life isn't fair. So what do you think the origins of that comes from, as far as with the dental hygienist? And because it's not just in the South, it is not just in the South. What are some of the origins? Because that's the pattern. And we'll keep doing patterns if we don't know origins and if we're not able to identify quicker. Go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say, but when you look at it, I think a lot of it is a learned behavior that a lot of people just constantly keep teaching from, generation to generation. I mean, like you said, a lot of us have gotten to the point to where we've built our own businesses and did things, and we've been very successful. But what I can tell you is that regardless of where you are in this place, you still have to do it. I mean, I've been doing this for quite some time, but even when I go into situations to where things are dead wrong, I walk into the thing when it comes to situations, you have to sit across from doctors and nurses. And when they're asking you questions and you're not giving them something that's based on what Brian is saying, I'm giving you something that's in black and white. This is what it says. And this is what people like yourself has done. We still have to sit back and we have to fight. We have to fight 20 times harder than anybody else, regardless of it, just based on the color of our skin. And I can be right in so many different situations, but I constantly have to continue to repeat myself. I have to constantly sit across from you and tell you, okay, even though it's in black and white, they're telling me, well, I need you to go back and get this, and I need this, and it's like I have to go get like 50 million different things just to go back to the same thing that says that this is what it is. You follow ARN. So if you follow ARN and I'm giving you the information based on ARN, then why do I need to go and get 5 other things from the FDA and everything else when it all goes back to the same thing? So racism is something that we're always going to be privy to. The origin of it is it's generational. And a lot of people, until you really, really put them in a situation to where you cover them or you save their butts, that's the only time people really look at the situation and say, okay, well, maybe I need to back up from this and approach this in a different manner.
I agree. What I want, this is a question that wasn't on the list. I definitely want to ask you all this question. I'm going to go out into a commercial, but I want y'all to think about this question. Before I go into a commercial, no, I'll do that when I come back. I'm going to go over everyone with the names, titles, and just say thank you so much for being here. But this is a question. If you could talk to your younger self today regarding any ism, not just the big isms that are filling our pictures right now, but if you could talk to yourself today and give yourself counsel on your trajectory, like what would you say? And I want you to keep it under like a minute or two, because I don't want you to tell me the whole story of what you're going to say. But what would you say to yourself? What words would you choose if you only had a couple of sentences that you could say to yourself? I'll say 2 to 4 sentences. A younger you, as far as getting you to where you are now and beyond, what would you say to yourself as far as setting yourself up for success? And so that's going to be the question when we come back. When we come back, I'll introduce everybody. And just thanks so much for being here on this Saturday morning. We want to be sure to give tools to people who are watching, who are listening, so that they are not stuck. So they're not stuck. They can feel all the feels and feel all the emotions, but not be stuck. Okay. Yes. right, thanks so much. Hey, everybody, we're here with Knowledge and Nonsense, and we're talking about ism, specifically colorism, racism, and some sexism today. I haven't heard anything about ageism, so we're not going to hit that. But we have Shannon Mason with us. She's the CEO of Evolve Sports. She is an African-American female that works within the sports arena, producing shows, producing magazines, helping sports people navigate to get to the next level, to train for the next level. Very involved in just making sure that even as sports is a platform, that people know how to handle business as it relates to that. So that they're not only an athlete, they have other things within their mind frame. Also, we have Karen Cherry. She's the CEO. She's the president and owner of Sips Consults. Also, Casey's Properties. My gosh, Ranka Consulting, Iraq. So Miss Cherry definitely has several businesses, like the Price and Educator. She hails out of the Pennsylvania area. A system-wide educator, Quamenia Perkins. She is a dental assistant. She's down south now. I believe she hails from by way of New York, but also maybe by way of somewhere else. She'll let us know about that. We have Brian Reynolds, who has blacked out for just a moment. He is president of he's a leader at a medical facility where he works. He's also president of a large body of individuals that works within medical care. So that's like a membership of some 30,000 people, and he is the president of that thing right now, which was really good because there aren't many minorities that have been in that position. And LaWayne Perkins, who is the president of CS Assist, the #1 online resource for anything CS. So any online tools you need, and he's backstage right now. What we're going to do is we're going to answer the question. Panel, I'm going to ask you to keep it short and sweet. As far as origin, patterns, and identifiers, what would you say to a younger you? And then I'm going to let LaWayne come on because I want him to drive a couple of questions about colorism. Again, origins, patterns, identifiers, so that people don't have to waste the time thinking that they're crazy or that this is just me. You know, what is a pattern and what is something I can do to navigate that pattern? Because you can't always go to HR. You can, but that's not always going to be. So you're going to have to be resilient and test and explore new methods. And I just want to let everybody listening know, hey, listen, life isn't fair. I'm not saying anything's right or wrong, but it's not fair. So I'm gonna bring LaWayne in. I'm gonna drop out. Will you guys say what it is you would say to your younger self?
For me, I would say to my younger self, I am will activate whatever comes after it. That's what I would tell my younger self. So if you go around saying, I am lazy, I'm tired, I am not, then you're going to activate it, because I am activates what comes after it. So if you change your words and say, I am intelligent, I am smart, I'm a beautiful African-American woman who is educated and dominating, and then you're going to I am is going to activate those things. So that's what I would tell my younger self. Remember that.
I like that.
I think for me, I would tell my younger self to practice patience, and just be more conscious with spending habits. I was blessed real early to get into the real estate arena, but because of lack of patience, I missed some opportunities because I'm naturally I'm a rushing type, get to the end of the project type person. So I would just tell my younger self, be patient.
And mine, I would tell myself that your life is like a movie. You're the writer and the producer. And if you don't like the script, cut. Because I spent a lot of years wallowing in what someone else said my life should be like, what I should do, how I should feel. And concept in my life, my movie. If I don't like what's going on, I'm a cut. Figure out what I need to do to get to where I'm trying to go. And don't take everything personal.
I like that.
I like that too. I would tell my younger self to be patient with the outcomes that are coming along the way, and to not allow my fears to take over. So just say yes to more opportunities. You never know where they're going to lead you. And more importantly, I would tell myself that it's okay to fall, because you got to get back up, and be mindful of those around you. Center yourself with the best of that you know is out there, so that you can grow with them.
I would say, I piggyback off of what you guys said about being patient, and secondly about be true to dying self, and dying self to be true.
Well, I would say you are Black, you are smart enough, you can do it. Because I think a lot of us, especially I was a very quiet child, and things would happen and I wouldn't speak up. So from my younger self to my oldest self, speak up. It's okay to use it.
Yeah. That's right.
I just think this is a powerful conversation, and I'm kind of still stuck on the colorism theme, only because when you some people will say that Alice Walker actually coined the term, colorism, which I thought was interesting. But Sharon asked a question earlier: what's the origin of some of these isms? And I know many of it points back to the transatlantic slave trade, and some even point back before then. It was actually a war strategy where they would take the different tribes and pit light against dark. We will pit, because you speak different languages, that made you my natural enemy. We saw that during the 80s and early 90s in Rwanda, that genocide in Rwanda. So these are common tactics being refurbished or recycled over and over again. In Trevor Noah's book, he speaks really eloquently about apartheid and how colorism and even played a part in that division. And reading that book, what I've learned about that technique is that the Europeans actually sent a council of scholars to devise a plan to create apartheid. So it was a lot of scholarly input, a lot of statistical measures that they came up with this plan. And from that plan of apartheid, you get a lot of these isms around the world. From ageism, that was a part of it. Pit the young against the old. From sexism, demoralize the women, so they begin to hate the men, and in turn, the sons will now hate the mothers. So this is all part of a bigger strategy, but a lot of it leads back to war and conquering mechanism that colonizers, not just white colonizers, because globally the biggest colonizing force wasn't Europeans, it was the Arab kingdom. But even in that domain, they also instituted many of these isms back to religion, and even sectism within common religious brands. So you have multiple brands of Islam, and within a lot of these brands, they are at war, long-standing historical wars with each other. So these isms go back way before slavery, way before apartheid, but it's interesting to track down the true sources of all of these isms. It's as they say, it's really a thing.
I wanted to ask. Okay, so that is so good. First off, again, thank everybody for being on. Cormelia, I felt your heart when you were talking a while ago, and I just wanted to jump on here. I was like, hug. I just want to hug you and be like, hey, hold your form. You got this. You got this. Listen, things shape us, but they don't get to hold us down, or like they don't even get to rob us of the hopeful perspective. They prepare us and they make us sharper. They make us sharper. You hear me? They make you sharper. But you hold your hold your form. I just want to run through the screen and be like, boom. I'm sorry you had to experience that. You're new to that area. And it's not just the South. I want you to know. So there are other places that does it, but it's definitely more common and more like, am I not standing right here in certain places? So I'm sorry you had to run into that. So with everything LaWayne just said, like, what can we do? Like, what can we do? So we see the origins, we see the patterns, and we see the identifiers. What can we do? And this is just for us. Like, we educating other people, but what's some self-checks we can do when we're operating in those same isms? Because I'm a firm believer that I don't get to be mad at the next person for calling me the N-word or calling me a B if I'm calling everybody the N-word and the B. That's me. I feel like if you give it license, you give it license.
That's
If it's
law of attraction.
Conversation, don't be mad that someone else is continuing the conversation. And if I'm going to engage in an ism, I can't be mad when the ism is
there it is.
Engaged against me. So what are some how do we identify it in ourselves and self-check so we're aware? Like, well, how do we hold each other accountable for that? Like,
well, I was gonna say this. For me, I've been reading Daniel. And so really I saw greed. Anytime there's greed, there's jealousy, there's envy, you're gonna face an ism somewhere. It don't matter your color or what. If that is the origin and the root, you're gonna face it. And so when I was looking at Daniel and I've been reading the chapter of Daniel, and I was reading how David went through so much, right? And so then I kind of start following the journey of God, and I start looking at him as a king and different things. And I realized even with him, there was greed. Anytime there's greed or jealousy, you're going to face it. So my thing for me is like, okay, God, what's the root of this situation? Why this person got an issue with me? Is there a jealousy? Is this greed? Is it about money? Is they intimidated? What is the situation? And so that's kind of how I've looked at everything, because I've even had my own race turn on me. So it's like, okay, even I've seen my son go through it when he was playing football at a university, that his own turned on him. And it was like, really? And so from there on, I've had to teach him, listen, it's don't take it personal. It's kind of like what Karen said, you can't take this personal. It's greed behind it. It's envy, it's jealousy, it's issues. And so when you start looking at it like that, then I had to go, oh, this is a spiritual fight. So I'm up here fighting you fleshly. I'm getting tired, worn out, can't think right. So this is spiritual. So that's how I've kind of had to battle it. It's like, okay, God, this is spiritual. Let me see the face behind this person.
When you said the jealousy, greed, that it will always be an ism, like that's something that would try to drive it. That made me think definitely though of the Tulsa massacre, what some people call the race riots, because there was some jealousy, some greed, and some envy in there. And so then the ism. So okay, so I'm back out. I'm sorry, I was gonna stay out. I'm back out. I just made me think of those things. Go ahead, guys. How do
I think it's also understanding your history and passing on your legacy and those true gems to your children. You know, for many of us, we are still here off the back of our ancestors, and it's our hope someday that we will at some point become a valued ancestor. So for those who you teach and mentor and you're training that truly listen and adhere to what you tell them, give them the real. You know, give them things that they can depend on and pass on to their next generation. So I think the only way to change things is, one person at a time, have these tough conversations with people that may not look like us, because many of them simply don't understand. Just like my grandparents gave me those jewels that were shared based on their reality, many of our neighbors experience the same thing. They only implementing what they were taught. So have those conversations. Don't be afraid to have those tough conversations. And in this environment, I think the more conversations that we have, the better.
Yeah, I agree. And I say ignorance. I use the word ignorance. When people don't understand something, they form an opinion. And so mine is, embrace those opportunities to educate someone. I mean, I'm 61 years old, so I've been in a lot of situations where it had to do with color, it had to do with gender, it had to do with demographics, it had to do, all these different things. So it's easy to puff up and do like that. But I take it back to it. I'll say my spiritual being. If I miss the purpose and think that my being here on light and being here in this world is all about me, then I miss the whole purpose.
Right.
And so any opportunity where I can educate, you know, you look at someone where Shannon was saying your own, and sometimes people don't, sometimes we forget. Sometimes we even forget where we came from because we feel like we need to be ashamed that we didn't grow up with a silver spoon and we have a silver spoon now. No, I'm proud to say I didn't always have a silver spoon, and I want to help educate you on how I got to this place. If that's
right.
what you want. You know, I'm here for you because I had people behind me. Well, LaWayne said ancestors. I had ancestors. I had mentors. I had role models that helped me. So, you know, I say to us that have gotten to a place in life, you know, let's ask someone, you know, what's going on with you? You know what? I'm saying good morning, and I notice you don't say good morning back versus, yeah, you know, and in fact, eventually that person will, it may not be you that they come around to, but they will come around to, well, I want to understand how I can have some steak and potatoes instead of just potatoes all the time. So I just say we teach them, whether it's another race, whether it's our race, whether it's another gender, let's educate every opportunity we can. And that comes from taking our feelings out of it. Right. But hey, if you had this conversation with me 20 years ago, I would have been like, But experience is our best teacher. With age should come wisdom.
Yeah.
Yes. And don't be afraid to give to other people. I feel like sometimes we get so caught up in trying to win the race that we're not making sure we bringing people with us.
That's right.
And I make sure that if nothing else, I'm trying to give back and pour into other people, because I know I didn't get here just manifest into this position that I'm in now. I'm always looking for someone else. And I always tell the technicians that I work with constantly, make yourself valuable, continue to make yourself valuable so that when the opportunity comes, you're ready for it and you're presented with, and you can go with the right set of skills with it. You can't tell somebody you want to be the CEO of a company, but you haven't yet to manage people, haven't yet to been in a position where you're sitting at a table where you have to present your what your industry does or what you are going to bring to that organization. So I'm always trying to bring somebody else with me. I'm never trying to just run out the gate and cross that finish line, because I know that I've seen the finish line be moved on me several times. So what I don't want to do is get there and not no one else and not have people to share with it. And I think that there's one thing I would tell myself, that also just remember that, to keep bringing people along with you so that they are, say, educated. We all can win. There's enough out here for everybody to get some. So I'm not going to be coveted of my information and my facts to keep other people back.
That's good, Lila.
Yeah.
Very, 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 very valid points. We just have to keep pushing forward, you know. And I use the term looting as the metaphor. We need to loot our minds of all of the foolishness and ransack all of the ignorance and refill it with something of value. You know, so go ahead and loot the minds and replace it with something of value. But that's not what's being shared. I shared an article with Sharon, and you can find it on thoughtcode.com. There's a powerful article about the roots of colorism and skin tone discrimination. This weekend, my wife and I were speaking about a movie called what was the Spike Lee movie, and they did a great job of visually displaying what's the name of the movie?
School Days.
School Days.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen School Days, wait, let me just call you out. Who hasn't seen School Days? Lose my number if you haven't seen School Days. That's a thing. You gotta see School Days. So in this movie, Spike Lee did a great job of displaying colorism and heightism and even ageism, but he put it in a very fun, real educational way. So it's definitely not a bore. So you have time this weekend. I don't know if it's streaming on Netflix, but really check out School Days. It can be a good educational tool, and also it's entertaining. So definitely check it out.
Yeah, and you know, and it's funny.
And just to kind of go back off of. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Karen.
No, I was just gonna say, even with that, it's funny because you look at big lips, you know, weren't in. Big hips weren't in. I'm saying,
right.
You know, your nose is too big, your lips are too big, your kinky hair, your this, your that. But then, and we down ourselves on what God gave us, and then somebody else is paying all this money to get what we got naturally, and now it's the end thing. Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
I will say,
I was going to say that we all so quickly want to just put people in a box and try to describe them. And so I relate to colorism because I'm the darkest one in my family, but I also have quote unquote good hair. So people are always trying to figure out, well, what are you mixed with? What's, what they're like, and it's just always been a weird conversation for me because everyone in my family has this hair. So I never thought of it as being something different, odd, unique, whatever. And I'm the first one to tell you all my friends hate it because I'm just like, I don't even care about it. Like, it does not mean anything to me. But I remember in school days, good hair meant you were light skinned and good hair meant that you were pretty. But then dark skin meant that you were either not as favorably looking and attractive and that you were somehow, your hair was going to be kinky and nappy. So I was always stuck in that world of trying to figure out where I fell. What line I was supposed to be on, who I was supposed to listen to. And it took me a long time and by the time I got to college to understand that I was just being Lila. And I had to understand what it was like just to be myself and to accept myself but people always want to put you in a box and stop letting people put you in a box. Stop letting them put you in a category because that makes them be able to stand out and do you and express yourself and go for what you want because everything's out there for you. You just have to make yourself available to get it.
We had more unity in our own communities. We can accomplish a lot. I think that there's too much.
Absolutely.
There's way too much division. I think we're always going to have this topic of colorism, which is, it's a topic in India. It's a topic in Asia. It's just named differently. It's a caste system in India. But yeah, at some point, we have to get away from, looking at our external and look at the internal, and I think definitely it comes from slavery, but it comes from our homes. When I was younger, my mother instilled in me that, this doesn't matter because everyone in my family was a different color. I just happened to be the lightest.
Right.
She put so much into me. She even named me, my name is so long. When people see it, I have to explain, why she named me and where it came from. And it is not only until I got older, I became so proud of what she named me because she named me after Kwame Nkrumah, who was Ghana's first president. So I know why she gave me that name because she wanted me to have a meaning, a purpose. And now I know that I have to use my platform in dental hygiene, where we're underrepresented. That's why we have so much disparities in healthcare because we're underrepresented in healthcare. Okay. But I know that I have to use my platform to do better and show others that you got to come on board because we need you.
Right.
We need you. And that's my purpose now. Hey, come on. I got to pull you up here with me. It's not okay for you to go in the corner and look at me. You got to come over here with me. Okay. So we got to have a purpose. We got to use our platform that when we go into these hospitals and we go into these dental offices, we pulling our sister in the corner and saying, what you doing? What's going on? What do you want to do? Because it's not enough for you to ask me what school you went to. We need to research how you going to get in school, how you going to get to where I'm at. Because we need you. We need to change, especially in the South when, a large disproportionate of Blacks don't have access to healthcare, don't have access to industry, don't have access to, health insurance, something that all of us have access to. So we got to use our platform.
Great. I know when we talk about just nameism, it wasn't until my cousin said a joke about names. Like I have a cousin named Tanisha, and her sister's named Skylar. And the joke he said, well, you see Tanisha's name on a resume. He said Tanisha don't look like she had good customer service, but Skylar is safe. And I thought about that. I said, how many opportunities have I missed because my name is Lawayne? They probably said, what is a Lawayne? So it's just interesting how names will resonate across agendas, right? Like Brian is a safe name, I will probably hire a Brian quicker than a Lawayne to come, because it's safe. So there's so many levels of this here, I think it all goes back to conversation. It really goes back to conversation.
Yeah, and it's the truth, Wayne, and coming from the corporate world, been in a lot of where we were doing joint interviews, and a name will come across that might have looked like Tanisha or Lawayne, and I sat there and watched them go in the trash, but still at that point not knowing, not being brave enough to be that voice, to the tune that I said, I'm starting a company, and I'm gonna hire a bunch of people that look like me because of opportunities that I saw that they weren't able to get. And it's sad to say. And even to this day, I mean, I've had my first business started in 2005. To this day, you don't see my picture on my website because I was more concerned with making sure we were able to create jobs than anybody knowing that I own the company. And but what God has for us, can't nobody stop it, because there have been a lot of people when they did find out I own the company. Oh, we aren't giving her company that business. But I'm sorry, folks, you can't stop what God has.
What God has, that's right.
And go get that.
When I was raising my kids and my son decided, my oldest decided he wanted to play football. And I knew there was a stigma with football as African-American men and the women. And so at a young age, I started transitioning him. And I was like, all right, so listen, this is how we're going to do it. I would interview him at home. If he's do the what up, I'll be like, nope, try it again. So I started preparing him. And I told him, I said, listen, God called you to be a king. Everybody has the opportunity. He's royalty. So you're a king and you have to walk, think, talk as a king. And so through this transition, never got any fights in high school. The coaches would say, your son, the respect, and it's yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. I don't care who it is. You respect your elder. It's yes, ma'am, no, ma'am to your teachers and everybody. Kids loved him. So he gets to college, and this is where the challenge began. He gets his first injury. And so he was kind of bummed about it. And I said, you still on that sideline, you represent as a king. You don't go down. You encourage everybody. You're there. You show up. You do your job. He did it. So by then the newcomers started coming in. And so he was like, Mom, they're kind of getting picked over me. I said, nope, you hold your head up. You're a king. You speak. And that's the thing I taught him. You speak what you want, because the Bible says life and death is in the power of the tongue. When God created, he spoke. So I would tell him, you speak to the atmosphere. You don't have to tell them, you speak to the situation. So he's like, yes, ma'am. So he started speaking. So then he goes in and he goes into his junior year, getting ready to play after coming off the injury his freshman year, got a little bit of sophomore. He gets injured again. He tore his ACL. So now the mindset shifts. Okay. So I'm dealing with depression. He's dealing with favoritism. He's dealing with all that. I was like, nope, you got to hold your head up. You got to speak. You don't shift your character. You don't move. Not knowing those 4 years, the University of Oklahoma was watching my son. We go to the senior game, and the coach come up to me, Coach Stoops. No, he wasn't the coach at the time. He was there. But the new coach and all of them come up to me and said, Jordan doesn't know it, but we're getting ready to give him to the Don Key Award, which is the highest award for your character as an athlete on the field and off the field in the classroom. And I sat there and tears ran down my face. And I was like, wow. And God showed me, it's what you taught him. You taught him me. You didn't teach him the world. You taught him me as a king. You taught him what I have always had for my body of Christ, for my people. God don't hide. And from that moment, I was like, okay, God, you don't see racism. You see humanity. You see, I died on that cross for every nationality, for every color, for every man, woman. I gave my life for all. So when you taught him that. So we go out, he gets the award. He's shocked. He's looking at me and I'm just like, wow. So then he calls me about 3-4 weeks later. He goes, Mama, you won't believe it. I said, what? He said, I'm getting the Prentice Gout Award, which is at OU is the African American Award for out of all the athletes, right? It's one of the highest awards, and he gets that. So in his senior year, he get 2 awards for his character on the field, off the field, in the classroom. And I'm just like, so from that, I told him, this is what you're going to teach. This is what we're going to teach anybody who comes in through Evolve Sports, no matter what it is. We're going to teach them your royalty. This is who God say you are. Follow your assignments. Deal with your character, and you can't go wrong.
Amen.
So, yeah. So I can truly say I'm a proud mom on that one.
You should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
You should be. You should be.
Awesome.
I think we lost Sherry.
Yeah. Mr. Brian, you've been quiet over there today, sir. How's everything in your neck of the woods?
Oh, you're on mute.
I got him.
I was gonna say, honestly, you know, all of you guys are talking about different things, and what I can tell you is that sometimes when God tells you to shut up, sit down, and listen, then you have to do it. And I've been quiet based on that. From the start of the conversation, there's a lot of things that I could have said, especially with colorism and things of that nature, but when that voice tells you to shut up, sit down, and wait on God, you got to do it, because there's a lot of things that's been going on with this whole COVID-19 thing and so on and so forth. And there's been a lot of situations that I've been put in, and you try to handle them. And I'm one of those people that I think first before I speak, simply because at the end of the day, you can't take it back. So I'm just absorbing. I've been quiet because of that. And I actually was going to say that it's just, that voice just says, shut up, sit down, and listen. So that's what I've been doing.
Well, we're about 57 minutes in. And I just want to say thanks to everybody for coming on. That's the one thing I like. Like, I've always loved this. I love it when I do talk time with Dee and Sharon as well. You don't always have to agree on everything, you know? And that's one of the things I think that people, that's one of the places I believe individuals get stuck, is when they're having a conversation with someone and someone's opinion isn't their opinion, or their worldview isn't their worldview. Like sometimes they get stuck. You don't have to agree. You can still listen. You still present your worldview. Their worldview doesn't have to be yours. Still present, because the whole time, like, you're learning, you're growing, and it may be one nugget in there that helps you, or you may have the one nugget that helps them. And with the colorism, I really just want to encourage. I really want to encourage everyone, recognize the patterns. So often we fuss about the pattern. And if you get stuck fussing about a pattern, or arguing about a pattern, or getting irate over a pattern, then you will continue to pick up fruit. But if you go to the origins, you can see where that thing started, how it got there, and you can actually educate and begin to unravel. A lot of times when we interact with people that don't look like us, or don't have the same gender as us, or come from another class system, maybe they have more resources or more wealth, or maybe you have more resources or more wealth. Be sure that you're not allowing that to cause you and your own view to pigeonhole them or minimize what they may bring to a situation, because in that moment, you are engaging in an ism as well. And I want to encourage everybody, if you're going to engage in an ism, then you do not have a leg to stand on when that ism is engaged against you. So you have to be self-aware. You have to give out the same practices that you want to see. And when we get those identifiers and we identify exactly what it is, we have a moment right there that we can make a conscious decision to do something different, not to go with just the pattern, but to do something different, whether that's educate, whether that's be a little more patient. Wayne said earlier, you know, he would tell his younger self, you know, hey, have a little more patience. Have a little more patience. And you don't always have to have the last word. I want you to know that you don't always have to have the last word. Promotions I've received in my life have been based on the fact that something stopped with me and it didn't continue with me. And I didn't even know anybody was looking at that time, you know? And so I just want to put that out there for people. Be aware of isms. If you are experiencing barriers based on isms, I'm sorry. I know that that's disappointing. That's hurtful. It's very frustrating, especially when you give 110 and you're like, I'm the perfect person for the job. and they gave it to somebody who's not as qualified, who doesn't have the same experience, who's for whatever. I'm sorry that you are experiencing that, but I want to say this: if you don't quit, you win. If you look at it and be like, test new methods, okay, this didn't work, this doesn't work. One of the comments said earlier, a no doesn't mean no, it means look at other options. And so if you don't allow that to stop you, then you will see growth, you will see progress, and you'll be able to reach back to help somebody else too. So I said it right there. The main point is be aware of isms that operate in our own life. Check out the identifier so that you can stop it, and do your best to use your platform to dismantle those isms within systems. We're talking about things in systems, not just one-offs and personal experiences. Within systems, within the government system, the disparities there. Within the healthcare system, the disparities there. Where are these origins? What are the patterns? What are the identifiers? So we can dismantle them. And there's so many isms. Don't only get stuck on just the isms you experience. There's more than racism. There's more than sexism. There's ageism. There's singlism. I'm single. Why do I have to pay more taxes than someone else? Who says that? Give me my money back. So there's so many isms that are out there, and you just want to be aware that if you're engaging in that ism, you cannot be mad when that ism is engaged against you. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I know my face wasn't up as much, but I love it. I love it because we want to hear other people's opinions, other people's views, other people's educational content that you can use. Inside of the chat, there's some links, and there, I think a book was mentioned. I don't know if a book was mentioned, but I'll put one in there for you to read. So go and check out some of those resources. Educate yourself so that you can be informed and make informed decisions. If you want to be a strategic person, a strategic fighter for whatever cause you're on, you have to have information and you have to make informed decisions. Y'all have a great day. Any final words before we sign off? We had 1 minute and 2. All right. Well,
if you want to see change, be that change.
That's right. That's right. Stay safe.
Stay safe. Everybody stay safe because COVID is still in these streets. Y'all be safe.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.